College football is in the air, and ASU now has over 2 weeks of fall camp under their belts. I'm Nick Border for Devil's Digest. Alongside me is my fellow staff member Cole Topham, and we've got a lot to uncover. It's been a hot couple of weeks out here watching this football team, but we've sure had fun with it.
Yeah, we really have, and we're so thankful for ASU too. We had 2 full weeks of practice to observe just to kick off this fall slate. So it's really been something. We have a pretty firm handle on how we know this offense is going to look, and as well as the other side of the ball, the defense. So we're just really fortunate, just what we've witnessed, and be able to express that to you guys.
So we'll get right to it. First things first, there's a new QB1 in town. Emory Jones officially announced the starting quarterback for ASU. A lot of hype surrounding the Florida transfer, and Cole, I'd love to hear your reaction to this news.
Yeah, I mean, Emory Jones, from the second he arrived on campus, he was resolute to win this starting role. And while on paper it seemed like the coaching staff, they wanted to bring in an experienced veteran, someone who had SEC experience, was able to handle that adversity, right, with all the young quarterbacks in the room, Trenton Bourguet, Paul Tyson. Throughout spring, it never really seemed like one of the other could surge ahead of the rest of the pack, right? Emory Jones, he arrived, and it wasn't the best start for him in the spring. He threw the most interceptions through the first week of practice, but it was that resiliency, right? His ability to handle that adversity, bounce back, rebound, and put together solid practices where he could connect with all of his receivers. That's what impressed me the most, and it resulted that second week, that one Wednesday where the offense threw 9 touchdowns during red zone work, and he connected with like 7 different receivers. I think Gio Sanders got 2 scores, Cam Johnson got 2 scores. So just his ability to dot up his entire receiving arsenal and bounce back after that tough week of practice where he was getting integrated with the team, just like that practice portion where he needed that week of rapport with his receivers. He really built off that week and was able to rebound really solid.
And something I want to add to that, a part of his game that he's been incredibly confident with, even coming into ASU, is his poise. And that's something that I've noticed watching him, whether it's 7 on 7, 11 on 11. He just looks comfortable no matter what he's doing, whether he's throwing the ball, whether he's going to step up and run, or even handing it off. He looks like he's always comfortable. He knows what he's doing, and I think that's something that's going to translate super well to Pac-12 play, especially coming from all of his experience in the SEC. I mean, maybe coming to the Pac-12 might be a little bit of a slower pace of game for him. We'll see, but that's something that's impressed me for sure from Emory Jones.
Yeah, and I will say he's more of a leader too than I think Jaden Daniels was last year. Just on that Wednesday, every single touchdown, he'd go up, dap up his teammate, give him words of encouragement, like tap him on the shoulder or on the helmet. And that was just the type of leadership qualities you want as a person leading the team, right? And so I think Emory Jones, he'll fill the leadership gap. I mean, obviously he was named a captain, so he's made an impression on not only the coaching staff but his teammates. And I think he will fill a void of confidence that was missing there last year for the front of the offense.
And with that, there is a handful of other ASU transfers that play on the offense that are worth noting.
Right.
And we've gotten to see a lot of them ball out during fall camp. Cole, who are some of those players that have stood out to you?
Yeah, right off the bat, Cam Johnson and Charles Hall, 2 receivers that have some speed to them, some size to them, and some experience to them, right? And I think either of them, whether it's both of them or just one of them, they command at least 1 catch in practice worth talking about. Cam Johnson, we talked to him yesterday about how he's able to elevate over those defensive backs and really come down with some tough contested catches. And Charles Hall, he can shake off any hit. He has the mass to just boulder through guys. So those are the 2 guys that have shined. But even Zeke Freeman, he's had his moments too with the ball in his hands, get it out quickly to him in the flat, and he's able to work in space. So some of those guys on offense, at least in the receiving department, their integration in the lineup has been really solid to watch, right? And then these tight ends, right? Jalen Conyers from last year, but you have a 6'7" Missouri transfer, Masai Swenson, who was the most targeted guy through the first 2 weeks of practice, I would say. And I don't expect that to change when ASU faces NIU here in a couple weeks.
Especially when we see him mossing players almost every practice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he just uses his size to get up and come down with the ball. He's hard to bring down and a lot of fun to watch. And on top of that, I think we got to talk about Xavier Valladay. Every coach we've talked to has had something good to say about him, whether it's Coach Sean Iguana, whether it's Coach Mike Kavanaugh. Super impressed with how Valladay has come in and fit in with the system, and I think he's going to be a super shifty back to work alongside Daniel Ngata.
Exactly, like that 1-2 punch I think is going to be so valuable with Ngata. He has that previous 2 years of experience, plus coming in as a pinch runner last year, third down situations, give the offense a different spark. He really succeeded in that role, and so I think Coach Iguano is going to be able to pair those running backs accordingly. Obviously, they're kind of different runners. Xavier Valade is a little bit bigger, taller, more upright runner, I'd say, and Ngata is kind of like that scat back, between the tackles, try and find, the holes that he can slip through, and I think he offers a little bit more in the receiving game as well. Valade, that wasn't a big emphasis for him at Wyoming, even though he did catch a couple of passes. I wouldn't say it's his strong suit, and Ngata, when we've talked to him, it seems like ever since he got on campus, it's been a steady progression of his receiving abilities. He told me in high school he used to run go routes through the linemen. Like, can you believe that? So obviously he's a little bit more comfortable with the ball in his hands, but I think we should see a pretty even split in playing time and how their roles are going to develop through the season.
And now if we look at the entire offense with so many new faces and returning faces, what is this team going to look like? What's the offense going to look like as we head into week 1 versus NAU?
I think they might be a little bit more solid than people think, right? I mean, you look at it on paper, a lot of transfers coming together, obviously at the quarterback position too, with the Florida transfer, Emory Jones. Like, he's the rock that has to make this all move. But from a team chemistry standpoint, when we talk to these guys, it really seems like not only do they like each other, but there's just a sense of like a collective chip on their shoulders. And that's really cliche to say, but it's just the right way to put it. Like, these guys are determined. They've seen all the social media talk, and they've seen the trashing of them on various platforms, and they just seem resolute to prove that all wrong.
And we've talked to so many different players over these 2 weeks, and I can totally attest to that. It just seems like there's a different energy coming into the season, a different confidence.
They see what you tweet, right?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. So the players are confident, and it's exciting to watch. So now moving on to the defense, we've also got a lot of new faces on the defensive side of the ball, worth noting. Cole, who are some of those players that have really stood out to you on the defensive side of the ball?
Yep, so Miami transfer nose tackle Nesta Jade Silvera, right? I mean, that's a position that was already kind of in limbo with DJ Davidson obviously on the Giants right now, and then mostly young depth behind him. TJ Pesafea, he received some snaps last year, but there wasn't really confidence with a veteran to step up and really take the reins at that position. And Silvera, I think he's done a really good job of that. Didn't see any snaps in the spring, but he was, A1, ready to go to start fall, and he just brings a different level of intensity to that line, I feel like. And with Rodriguez, and you guys have read our practice reports and seen our practice footage, like, he can get pretty animated, and I think Silvera feeds off of that and transfers that to the rest of his teammates, especially during inside zone run work where the offensive line is pitted against the defensive line. Silvera, he's just different. Like, he is so vocal, talking after every play, and he backs it up with some pretty quality thumps on the people in front of him. So I think Silvera, to me, has been the most impressive, at least in that front seven.
And along with that, the secondary has been turning some heads so far at ASU camp. Some words both players and coaches have been using to describe this secondary: speedy, versatile, and lengthy. Can you attest to that? I mean, we've got a lot of new faces on that end as well, and there's some pretty tall players that are lengthy.
Yeah, there are some pretty tall players. Good mix of athleticism too, but if we want to start with length, we have to start off the conversation with Ro Torrance, the Auburn transfer, because from his very first snap in 11 on 11, you could tell that length was going to impact the secondary this season. It was a go ball against Chad Johnson Jr., who actually had a really good release on that sideline route. But Rowe, he was comfortable. He just turned around, found the ball, and just casually dropped it to the turf right in front of him. And it was like, wow, if a player can make those types of plays casually like that, and where he doesn't worry about the ball going over the top of him and just being confident in his abilities, then I think that is really dangerous for the secondary.
And another thing we've seen from that secondary is just a mass amount of different rotations that they're able to utilize in the back of the field. What have you seen from that front?
Yeah, we've seen some really interesting combinations. Obviously, boundary, field side boundary is the shorter side, field side is the longer side. And ASU will go more length to the boundary and more athleticism to the field side. So you've got the cornerback safety duos you got like Rowe and Keywan Markham to that boundary, and then Mason Williams, Jordan Clark, and Corey Bethley maybe to the field side. But another note on Clark is he did get banged up over these last few days of practice, and he was the team's exclusive starting nickel last season. And in the interest of versatility, like we mentioned before, he's been playing some safety, gotten some reps there, and he's also a leader of the defense as well. Like, you can hear his voice when the secondary is talking. So if he's out for some time, that really shakes up how the secondary is going to look, right? So with Clark playing two different positions, that depth behind both positions becomes a little bit less solid. So that's why we're seeing that rotation. And also Donnie Henderson mentioning, like, he has 9 starters set in stone. He's deciding on likely the second safety position and the second cornerback position. Clark's injury kind of shakes it up there, right? The competition at those two positions is going to be a bit stiffer, right? So it's all about, over those last 2 weeks, solidifying what players are going to be there and seeing what players work well with each other. So that's why we're seeing a lot of safety rotation, not only because of the interesting length and athleticism pairings, but it's more about the communication and just finding the right cohesive tandems there. And at that second cornerback position, you've got Ed Woods, Keywan Markham, and Mason Williams. But with Mason Williams playing a lot of slot, it might be a little bit more between Keywan Markham and Ed Woods there. So a lot of things to keep track of in the secondary, but that's what Donnie Henderson is doing too. He wants to have options, and so far, with 2 weeks remaining till NAU, it seems like he will have those options.
A pretty electric group to follow indeed, and as you mentioned, NAU just 2 weeks away. What are some things that this ASU team's got to iron out or really hone in on as they prepare for that NAU game to kick off their season?
Yeah, I mean, heading into fall camp, it started with the quarterback position, and I think it sticks with the quarterback position, right? Emory Jones, he's named the starter. He's going to get the majority of the reps at practice, so now it's all about finding the things that he's comfortable at and playing to his strengths, because I don't think the ASU offense did that a lot with Jaden Daniels. It was more Zach Hill's philosophy, let's try and fit Jaden Daniels in with it and the receivers in with it, instead of just reevaluating and saying what things are my quarterback comfortable with that will succeed on game day, right? So I think that's what Glenn Thomas, the offensive coordinator, and Jones are going to do, is figure out what are the things Jones excels at, which obviously is read option, but also, you know, working in between the numbers, hitting his big tight end target in Messiah Swemson or Jalen Conyers. At least that's what I think is gonna happen. So it's more about finding what Emory Jones is comfortable at, what he's not comfortable at, and then providing a game plan for NIU that are going to amplify those strengths without being a little bit too creative, because they have number 11 preseason team in the country, Oklahoma State, the next week.
All right, well, there you have it. NAU taking on ASU here at Sun Devil Stadium, September 1st, just a couple of weeks away. But until then, I've been Nick Borgia. That's Cole Topham with Devils Digest. We appreciate you tuning in, and as always, be sure to check out DevilsDigest.com. Follow us on Twitter at Devils Digest for more comprehensive practice reports, analysis like this, sights and sounds, press conferences, you name it, we got it all. We got it all. So check us out. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.